Tonight is a specially scheduled meeting to review the preliminary budget for the 94-95 fiscal year. I will be turning it over to the Board Liaison for Finance, Ralph Redcamp, in a moment. Just want to remind the folks out there that this is being videotaped for play on cable channels later in the week. We will go through the agenda, at which time at the end, for the audience of participation and questions, you may ask questions pertaining to only the items covered this evening during the regularly scheduled meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ralph.
Okay, this is the second of four meetings that we initially scheduled to review the entire budget and then discuss it. Additional meetings, as I said last time, will be scheduled as needed to complete the review of the budget. Tonight's session, we will be dealing with personnel and curriculum, all phases of it, special education, elementary and secondary curriculum, as well as personnel. I'd like to move along with the next item on the agenda. Fred, you're on.
Okay, thank you. My role tonight is pretty much to review the personnel sections of the budget, and of course this includes a whole bunch of different types of items that are scattered throughout the budget. When I think about the budget and the important areas, obviously salaries are the more important things we have to deal with. And I'm sure that everybody sitting here understands that the budget preparation itself, I mean, tonight is a result of an enormous amount of work that it took to get us here. And we make a lot of different kinds of decisions that are important as far as what goes into the budget and what we talk about when we get to this point. Dr. Elko mentioned the other night, as he was talking about the budget preparation and the budget itself, that we have included a 3.2% increase in all the different salary categories. That means that it's 3.2 for the teachers, it's 3.2 for administrators, it's 3.2 for all the different service staff groups. When we're saying 3.2, and I really hope to make this clear for everybody to understand, when we're talking 3.2, we're not necessarily saying that every single person is going to get 3.2%. We have several different types of compensation plans, as you know, and in several of them, it is quite possible that gets divvied up in a little bit different fashion than just a flat 3.2 across the table for everybody. And that will be true again this year. It's quite possible that somebody might get 2.2, another person might get 4.2, or the numbers may be a little bit different than that. Dr. Elko said the other night that everybody's getting 3.2, and he said that because I told him that's what I put into the budget. I have talked to some board members, and I want to make it fairly clear now too, that there is an exception to that at this point in time, and that is for some secretarial salaries. The number in there is a little bit higher, and at a later point in time I want to be able to talk more thoroughly with the board in terms of what that means and what actually is in there and why it's there. One of the things also that Dr. Elko mentioned the other night in his presentation was that if you look at the comparison of our cost per pupil throughout the county, and there are 21 school districts altogether in the county, our cost per pupil for the whole budget is so low that it ranks about 17th in the county. I took and looked at a couple other different sections of the budget as well to see how that matched up to those sections of the budget. Section 1100, which is the section that deals primarily with instruction and which is heavily laden with instructional salaries, we rank 13th in the county in terms of the cost per pupil. If you look at the special ed area, the section 1200, you also see that compared to the rest of the county, we rank 14th. So that a good basis, as best we can determine anyhow, to try to compare what we're doing and the way we do it is to compare those cost per pupils. It's also important, I think, to note that as you look through the budget, it's typical that everybody wants to look and see from this year to next year and what the difference is, and it should equate some way, somehow, to the numbers that we're talking about, 3.2%. And that's going to be impossible to do this year. And the reason that's impossible to do is it's actually several reasons. One, if you recall, last year, at this point in time, we were negotiating with our teachers. And we had a proposal on the table at that time that was the equivalent to about 1.5%. We put that into the budget. That was an assumption we made at that time to put that money in to build the budget on. By the conclusion of the budget process, nothing had happened, so that amount stayed on those line items. So that there really was 1.5% budgeted last year on a line item. This year, the line item has been adjusted to equate to the 3.2 for each of the 2 years. The other thing that makes it very difficult to try and compare, very simply, is that with all of the reorganization we've gone through this year, if you look at a particular building and the dollars we spend in that building, projected to spend in that building this year, and you look at the projections for next year, they're not the same people that we're projecting those numbers on. We have scattered people all over the place. We've opened 2 new buildings. We have less people in some, more people in others, 2 buildings that we didn't have anybody in before. So that impacts rather dramatically in terms of trying to look at those line items and understand it. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, you have as a part of your packet a sheet that relates to personnel changes for this year. We worked hard to try to get to a point where we could in some way, a way that everybody could understand, demonstrate what happened with staffing for next year. The bottom line is that there are 28 new positions in the budget. I know Dr. Elko talked about 29 the other day. We have since refined a little bit better so that there will be only 28 positions in the budget. But what we wanted to try to do was to show by example where those 28 people are, and the other directors a little bit later on, I'm sure will respond to any questions in terms of the need for those particular positions. But if you look at the elementary level, there's a total of 8 new positions that's being asked for, 8 new classroom positions. And again, we're trying to show that in some cases there are more people in a particular grade level than is needed, i.e. at the kindergarten level, so that's a -2. So if you look at elementary, you'll see that there's a total of 10 different positions there, but a net of 8. So that in fact, that's what's being asked for, 8 new positions at that particular level. Because of the opening of the 2 new schools, there's also a need for 2 elementary librarians. There's a net loss of 1 art person district-wide. Now, art is a position that the people are certified K to 12, so there is movement from one level to the other. We've actually, in spite of the fact that we're growing, we will end up having 2 people who are contracted, temporary professionals this year, new people, that we will not have positions for next year. We're actually down 2 positions, but we net only a loss of 1 because we moved a person out of another position that shows up down a little bit further into an art position. The phys ed is, music, I'm sorry, is a total of 3 new positions, and again, Mr. Keffer will talk to that. Phys ed, there's a net of 1 less position than we have this current year. And again, they get intertwined in terms of whether they're coming from elementary or secondary. But again, if you look at the chart, you can count how many are in each building this year and how many will be needed there next year. There will be a need for 3.5 new reading people, and all those positions are at the elementary level. If you were to look at what's happening at the secondary level, you're going to see that there's a new business position, although there are some other, that's been jockeyed around as well in terms of what's being asked for there, but a net of 1 new position. English, 1.5 new positions. Foreign language, 1.5 new positions. Math, 2.5. 3 in science, and 4 new positions in social studies. There are also 2 other positions that we've eliminated because of the need not to pursue them next year. One of them being the past position, which is the person we moved into the art position. So we, between the 1 art position and the 1 past position that we lose, that equates to the 2 less positions we have in art. At the area for special ed and student services, they're asking for 2 additional people over what they have this year, and again, Judy will be more than happy, I'm sure, to talk about that. I won't deal in any more detail with that at this point, but obviously if you have questions when I get done, I'll help you with that way I can with that. But again, to summarize what I'm talking about in terms of the staffing needs, we're looking at the elementary level for a total of 16.5, which is the 8 elementary classroom positions, 2 elementary librarians, 3 music, and 3.5 reading. The secondary level, it's 1 business ed, 1.5 English, 1.5 language, 2.5 math, 3 science, 4 social studies, with a total new positions of 13.5, but because of a need for 4 less positions, the net is 9.5. And Judy has 2 new positions in the special ed area. So it nets out to a total of 28 new positions. There are several other areas in the budget that I want to touch on because they do impact, obviously, in terms of their cost. One is in the area of substitutes. There's a large category under the 1100s in the instructional area in terms of substitutes, but throughout the budget and in some of the other professional categories, there are also subs listed. The increase is slightly under 4%. There's nothing magic about that. That's more or less an arbitrary figure. But what I'm looking at there in terms of increasing it somewhat is that at this point in time, we still don't have a good handle in terms of what our total cost is going to be for our subs for this year. For 1993-94, we budgeted a number that was quite a bit lower than our actual cost from the year before. So I'm a little bit concerned at this point to want to stay with the number we have, and I've raised it somewhat. Again, that's a figure that later on we can come back and look at in terms of more of a need or less of a need. I have an area of concern that I want to just mention tonight and tell the board that at some time, perhaps in the very near future, we'll be back to talk in more detail about what we're going to do with it. I've lived my life probably for the last 10 years in the constant fear that our substitute caller would retire. It is one of the worst jobs anybody could ever have, and this lady does an absolutely incredible job. She puts in time every night up until about 10 o'clock. She doesn't plan anything for her weekends for the most part because of the calls that come in and her trying to keep ahead of it. She is one person that is responsible for all of our subs K to 12, and it's an extraordinary job. She makes her husband help her. He retired. She has her daughter who is home with a small child, and she makes her come over and help out sometimes as well. She is going to retire, so that I'm looking at some different options in terms of what we're going to do about that. And there are several different things that are worth looking at and considering.
Can we get her husband?
Well, I don't think so.
How about her daughter, right?
I don't think so. It is a real concern because we have a constant need for subs. And we have problems with getting subs. This time of year is incredible. 2 weeks ago, Mrs. Matusky's sister died, and she went out to Western Pennsylvania to the funeral. My secretary took the recording machine home, and all the calls were forwarded to her home. On one day alone, she made 84 calls where people said no. And that's already considering the fact that many positions for staff development or for some of the other needs that we have already been filled. People that we know ahead of time are going to be out on absences. That's a big concern for me at this point, but there are some options, and we'll get back to you a little bit later on that. You do know that in the budget, we do budget extra money for degree improvement. What that means very simply is that as teachers get additional coursework or they get additional degrees, they move on the salary schedule 3 times a year. I've left that number at the same number it has been for the last 2 years. I'm fairly comfortable. It's down a little bit this year so far in terms of what it had been last year. So that number will remain the same, and I'm fairly comfortable with that. Tuition reimbursement, of course, is another area of cost for the district. I've increased that slightly, and the reason I've done that is simply it's a guess, but I'm basing it in terms of where we are this year. The fact that we're adding a lot of new people, and we also, I assume if we get a contract, or when we get a contract, that there will be some increase as far as the contract is concerned. There are a couple other categories in the budget that I wanted to mention simply because as you see them in this budget, they look very confusing, and they'll pop out at you because you'll see a big number there last year in this year's budget and nothing there for next year. The one category is sabbaticals. We have to budget on a line item, a separate line item for people who go out on sabbatical. That's a line item for elementary, it's a line item for secondary, it's a line item for special ed, etc. I don't budget that at this point simply because there are still some chances that people may apply for sabbaticals. So that as we refine the budget, I will put the numbers on those lines. The money is in the budget to do that. It's just a matter of where that money is right now. The other areas in the secondary gifted program, we have a number of people who provide services to the gifted program at the secondary level. The elementary level, they're all full-time, they're line items, and they're easy to project. At the secondary level, because there are so many people involved and different degrees of involvement, that I don't know yet at this particular point who all those people are. And again, with all the reshuffling we've done with the staffing, that will get refined again a little bit later point in time. The money is in the budget for that. It is just a matter of taking it out of the building where those people are located. If they're half-time, we take half the salary there and move it to the gifted category. So that when you see a number like $398,000 this year and zero next year, we really haven't done that great a job with it. That will get refined later on. I want to talk just a second about benefits, and just for the sake of the need to mention benefits. In the past, we have provided an amount for the benefit coverage that was related to our lowest costing program. We have four different companies, four different programs, not four different companies, that we subscribe to. And our employees have the opportunity to enroll in any one of those four. In the past, the Blue Cross Blue Shield has always been the lesser expensive of all of them. That runs contrary, by the way, to all of my colleagues. In all the other school districts, Blue Cross Blue Shield has shot way past the HMOs, and that has been for a period of time. In our case, we are individually rated. We're not a part of a consortium of any sort, and we've managed to do fairly well over the years. But this year, coming up for the first time, that Blue Cross Blue Shield number will be higher than the personal choice. So that our contributions will be based on the cost that's related to the personal choice HMO benefit. That the rates that we've been given by Blue Cross Blue Shield for personal choice for next year is going down about 5 or 6% from this year. The Blue Cross Blue Shield will be going up about 5 or 6, 7%, I believe. So that there will be some savings that we'll appreciate by virtue of the personal choice going down. Most places are into managed care, and certainly it's going to benefit us, I think, to proceed with that. I should tell you, too, that as a result of that, if you all recall, at least the board members that were here last year, and maybe even a year before we first started talking about it, I guess, the need to cost share as far as the benefits were concerned, that need was predicated upon getting control on the increases that we had been seeing relative to the benefits, the medical costs in particular. Because of what we anticipate this year with some savings as opposed to the cost, excuse me, the cost rising again, there will be no additional cost sharing on the part of the employees. The service staff's contributions will remain at $25 per month, and the administrative staff will remain at the $50 per month. There are some other positions in the budget. Again, it was highlighted by Dr. Elko, and just for the sake of brushing over them quickly, I'll do that. There are 2 new principal salaries in there, and that's obviously directly related to the new buildings. We have 2.5 custodians in there. They're related to the new buildings. You did hear Art talk a little bit on Tuesday night about the fact that that is a fairly low number, and he is obviously going to have more than 1 1/4 person in each building. But he is taking people away from some areas now that he's not going to need for this next year. But he will be back. He will be back next year, and there will be a need perhaps to accommodate some changes in an upward fashion for him. We've also got some money in the budget for some new secretaries and clerks. They're again related to the new buildings. We are going to accomplish some of the savings, though, in that area through lesser need at Penn Dale, as an example, and there will be some other adjustments in terms of the secretarial staff, so that's a minimal need there at this point. There are 4 new lunchroom aides in the budget. They're directly related to the new building. Charlie, if he has a chance, or if you want to ask him about it later on, can expand a little bit more, but the lunchroom problems have been a concern for a long period of time, and I think back probably last December, November, whenever it was, Mr. Keffer did initiate a committee to study that. And we've seen some fairly negative comments related to that lately, and perhaps within the next several months over the course of this budget, it's possible that we'll be back to you again with some kind of recommendations out of that committee. There is a need for a couple more special ed teacher aides, and I assume that they're directly related to the need for the additional teachers. There's also 1 more elementary classroom aide that's in the budget. We provide elementary classroom aides as people who are able to get us past the point where the classes are larger than we want them to be, but there's really no space available to create new classes or whatever. So that as Mr. Keffer is looking forward to next year, it would appear that there is a need for perhaps 1 more additional person. They're again the kinds of things that we budget for based on our projection of the need. If the need isn't there, then certainly they're not hired. If in fact the need is there for more, we come back and tell you that we've got these problems and we need to do something to add to it. I have no more comments if you have questions over anything I've said.
Sure, I have a question. Fred, I would think that personnel might, without a doubt, has probably the most difficult job trying to budget in light of the fact that we are betwixt and between in contract relationships with the teachers union. And I was wondering if it was possible, if we could possibly get 2 set of figures. This is what the budget looks like if we continue without a contract. This is what the budget would look like if the contract would kick in during the 94-95 school year. I guess I really want to see both of those columns in relation to benefits. Unless there's a board member here that doesn't feel the union should co-pay, speak up now or forever hold your peace. But I would, they're going to pay their benefits in some amount. They are going to pay. And I guess they're getting into the benefit program, or they're, or remaining as it is a big difference in the number and the cost to us. So I find your
Are you asking
budgeting
for
difficult because, really got 2 figures. This is what the budget will look like if we don't have a settlement. This is what it'll look like if the settlement kicks in.
But currently, we don't have a proposal on the table.
How do you know what the peg is?
So what figure would you put in there?
Okay, a better
0.
question then, how are we budgeting in light of the fact that we are between?
Yeah.
Budgeting 3.2.
Yeah, remember when I started, I said that we make some assumptions in the process
Okay.
in terms of what we put into the budget. And again, that the process was started quite some time ago. The assumption that was made at that time was the 3.2%.
Okay.
So that's what this budget contains. And I think that over the course of the deliberations, then the board's going to have to give some different direction if they want to change that. What this contains is the cost if, in fact, that would happen. We really haven't had a chance to talk to the other board members since last night, and if board members have not read about it, the board effectively withdrew the proposal that they had before, but didn't really withdraw it.
We picked it up off the floor when it was
reiterated to them
thrown
that
off
they
the
had
table.
rejected it in whole, so therefore there wasn't anything there to
Right.
elaborate on.
Right.
And
But-
copay?
Yeah, and the co-payment is something obviously that's a portion of this budget.
Okay, copayment.
I think that's a valid question, the 3.2%. But that's one I think that we're gonna have to take up in an executive session.
That's correct.
Separately. What I'd like to do, if people don't mind, because as I listed down my questions for Fred, they really all relate to what the curriculum people are gonna talk about and what the positions are. To get some continuity to it, can we let them all do their presentations and then have the
That's
discussion?
fine.
I have one
That's fine.
specifically for Fred, though.
Okay?
Actually, I have two for Fred.
Oh, sure, now you got two.
Well, has to do with the legislature, so. We were talking about mandates, and we're trying to get a feel in Montgomery County what these mandates are costing us. The first one is sabbaticals, which you brought up. What is the costs, what would be the cost of last year's sabbaticals and the substitutes that, just a ballpark figure and the substitutes that went along with that? Do you have a idea off the top of your head?
No, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay. There is currently a proposal to remove sabbaticals, and there's a proposal to have sabbaticals only for health purposes. So that's something that, Montgomery County is looking at to formulate so that we can go back to our legislators and get that.
The sabbatical question has been around for a long period of time, and there have been a number of initiatives to do away with sabbaticals.
Right.
There was a local initiative several years ago. A lady that was a board member, I believe, over TE, different East Town, was pushing that. The legislature is gutless in terms of dealing with things of that nature. They finally changed the law regarding sabbaticals and said that if you're going to take a sabbatical for travel purposes, then it has to be for a full year. However, it's negotiable. So that by not saying it's illegal to take a less than a full year sabbatical, they made it negotiable, and certainly the power to strike has created a lot of contracts that carry that language with it.
Yeah, I know that
Or half-year sabbaticals for travel.
it's a touchy issue, but it's certainly, we're trying to educate the public into how much it costs us, because it is something that can be done and can be taken. And given the time frame, by the time someone's eligible for a sabbatical, they're usually up in the higher salary range. So we're talking about a substantial amount of money, plus their coverage for their medical benefits and all that, plus the substitute. So it's
Plus
a heavy...
retirement. We pay a full year of retirement for that as well.
Right, and the full-year retirement, and the Social Security, I imagine, gets put in also. So, it's a nice hefty bill. And I agree with you that our legislators need some encouragement or have some problems dealing with the subject.
Election day's coming up.
Yeah, but election is coming up, and they're out there campaigning. Not that it's going to do anything. But that's something that, I'd like to look at. The second issue was the school nurses, and I don't know, I'm sure you heard about the hoopla that went on with that. There is a bill that would allow us to use registered nurses instead of
That's Lois's bill.
teacher certified. Do you know the difference between, how much does it cost for nursing right now in the schools?
Well, we have what we call staff nurses, and all of our staff nurses, they're non-certified people. They're all RNs or LPNs. Some of them even are degreed with the RN. They're not certificated. That's the only difference. We begin them at $7.50 an hour. We begin a nurse who is certified, and obviously they're a degreed person with certification. They begin at $31,000 a year.
Okay. So the fact that if that law was receded so that they did not have to have a certification, then that $31,000 would be probably more at a $750 per hour range, would run about
That's the kind of
25,
legislation.
30.
Yeah, that's the kind of legislation that always seems to me that somebody is trying to make a point, knowing full well that it's not going to go. Nurses, school nurses, certified school nurses are professional employees under the school code, and they have tenure just like any other professional employee. They're members of the bargaining unit, and that means that PSEA is involved in preserving those jobs.
But the legislature currently wants to change that. So that would save us a substantial amount of money.
We can't plan on the conjecture.
No, what I'm saying is, we're talking about mandates,
Press on.
and those are two mandates. Okay.
Yes, Vicki.
Fred, you were speaking about the 1.2% salary increases that were budgeted in this current year's budget. I'm looking at those salaries from the year before to what we budgeted last year, and it looks like between regular and special ed, we budgeted an additional approximately $1.3 million. Do you have a figure on the percentage of the increases? Because that's what I'm seeing here is showing up between year-to-year budgets of last year's and the current year's budget. What that
You mean 92, 93 budget to the 93, 94 budget?
Yes, yes,
Well,
because of the salary,
the 92, 93 school year called for a 9% increase
right,
for the teachers,
right,
so that it was budgeted on the basis of a 9% increase.
yes. I'm talking about, though, in the increase of salaries in the budget for 93, for the 93-94 year, it looks like you took from that budget and increased approximately 1.3 million. It has nothing to do with the 9% increase because that's only a part of the 92 totals. What I'm trying to figure out is if we budgeted 1.5% for salary increases, and to date we still have our instructional staff frozen, and we began with a $3 million starting balance in the budget, took in all the special funding from the bond refinancing, and I keep hearing about all the new revenues that were taken over in the course of the 93-94 year, or that really didn't get used, and I'm wondering, where's the money? Is this also another a part of this current budget that's just been absorbed?
No, the salaries for this year, the 1.5%, it wasn't 1.2, it was 1.5 that we budgeted, is based on the number of people that we had at that point in time. For each salary, I have a name. If they were new positions, then I had budgeted $35,000. So that the numbers that are in this year's budget are reflective of that number of people. And I would expect, with very little thought that there would be a lot of money left over, it would be fairly close in terms of budget to what's actually spent.
Well, the money, the dollars are maybe in the budget. What I'm looking for is where's the money being
I think
carried over?
Vicki's saying last year, we put in a certain increase in the budget that we didn't have to pay this year.
Yeah,
Where's that money?
Why is it
Understanding that it was 1.5%, but we were also planning to get money back in terms of benefits that we did not budget the full amount because we had expected copay.
We did the benefits appropriately. We
Yes.
didn't charge anything.
I think Mrs.
We did
Sherman-
not put a copay in because you had to change it by law before the budget was passed. Remember, it was legally required that you maintain your status quo contract, and it was done in the budget.
That's
So
right.
there's 1.2% that I'm wondering, where's the money?
Okay.
And I keep hearing all of this, the bond refinancing, all this flow, and it seems to me this current board is adopting the carryover of a budget that didn't stand last year, this current year.
That's why you should
And-
use the actual numbers versus what was budgeted. That should show us what we're actually spending in terms of those particular line items rather than what was budgeted for that.
I can confirm this with Dennis, who's not here tonight, but I believe the following to be the case. 1.5%, the step increase, was included in the salaries line. If you looked at current, how much we spent today, we haven't spent any of that because none of that money's been put in. However, perhaps we're optimists, but if you look at through this year, we're anticipating that that money will be spent. And when you look at estimated current year, that 1.5%'s in there. If we haven't spent that yet this year, it will be reflected in the fund balance that carries over.
Ralph, if the money's not in the ending balance, we have to budget for it again. Even if we were to adopt a contract of 1.5% this current year, we've got to pay out of this year's budget when it was already paid.
But-
It's paid and spent out of
The point is that until we go in and reformulate something, the bargaining position, that, remember, when we settle a contract, it's for this school year too. Hopefully, we'll settle it before the end of the year, and that money will be gone, but somehow that we're gonna end up paying something for this year. And that's where that money is. It's currently there. If it's not spent by the end of this year, it'll be in a larger fund balance so that we can have it when we finally do settle.
I think
Right,
that,
is that-
yeah, let me see if this makes any sense to you, Vicki. The money that we budgeted at the 1.5%, and then you look at the estimated expenditures. So that if you look, as an example, at Gwen Nora, we budgeted $1,402,945. That was a 1.5% increase. If you look at the estimated, it's $1,402,945, the budgeted amount. That amount has not been spent, but he is estimating that. What Dennis has done in a lot of these categories, simply because he doesn't know yet what the costs are, he has just moved the budgeted number into the next category, so that it reflects the budgeted number in two different places.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone's listening to my point. What I'm saying is the ending cash resources of this current year's budget isn't reflecting the monies that were budgeted, but to our knowledge today weren't spent. 1.5% for salary increases and everything else that was taken in as not a part of the budget in expenditures.
That's because
Why don't we have
the
it?
budgeted is being bounced off against the estimated. And the estimated is an inaccurate number, simply at this point, because all he has done is moved over the budgeted number.
So then we can expect perhaps a large jump in our beginning cash resources?
I would assume that as these numbers are refined to a total for the estimated, there will be some changes there, yes.
His estimated current year is what you're saying, is that he's estimated that we would reach
An agreement? and
an
that's
agreement
what
with the
he's got.
1.5, so he's put that in there. Our year doesn't end till June, so he's just estimating, and he's estimating that between now and June, we would have to pay the 1.5.
That's what I-
Which we had budgeted before.
That's what I-
So in the salary category,
Okay.
that would be the cost. Now,
Then we can,
but what's going to happen, depending upon what happens between now and the budget being approved, either that cost will go up because we will have settled for last year at more than 1.5 with the teachers, or that cost will go down because we will not have settled and that 1.5 had not been
Okay, so then
paid.
you're
So that amount of money would go into the main part.
Mr. Akeb, I feel that everybody ought to just stop guessing about it, and we'll just hold the questions. The questions are good one, comments are good one, but let's have Mr. Kelly at all these meetings from hereafter, since he's our financier and should be here each night.
Money was, that's where it is. But
Well, let's let him
we'll
answer.
get it confirmed next week, Thursday. Are there any other questions specifically for Mr. Schmidt?
I have a question about home and school person. Should I
Yes.
ask you or ask Judy later?
Right. I think it would make more sense once we hear what the program is. That's why I wanted to get on before we got into individual people.
If it's not too hard, you can ask me. If it's difficult, we'll save it for Judy.
All right, 2 points, clarification first. Is the home and school person the one that takes care of homebound instruction?
No. The home and school visitor, the function that he serves in the school district is one for attendance and also alternative education. And we've had Mr. Hillman with us, I guess now for about 7 or 8 years, and are required to have a home and school visitor by law.
Prior to Mr. Hillman, Mrs. Sykes was a home and school visitor, Jan Sykes, for a number of years.
That answers the first question, and never mind the second question.
I'm glad I could help you.
Thank you.
Same question.
Okay, I'd like to then move back to the presentations, and let's go through the entire sequence and then come back and get board questions on our own, because sometimes they interrelate so much, it's going to be difficult if we don't get through them all. Don. For pupil allocation.
You want us to go through the staffing needs
Yes.
at this point, Charlie? You want us to-
Well,
See the staff.
why don't
Well,
you allow
let's go
them-
through the agenda.
Oh, you want to go through the
Sounds good to me. So we have it.
In your packet, the first page behind the agenda is the per pupil expenditure page. Let me explain that the pupil expenditures are the amounts of money that we allocate to the building principals based upon the enrollment of students that we project for the coming year. We assign those funds to the building principal to purchase building supplies, replacement textbooks. You'll see that those supplies and texts also apply to special ed students. In addition, audiovisual, television supplies at the high school, library supplies and library books. We leave it up to the principal to determine how to allocate those funds based on their enrollment and based on the per pupil amount that you see at the top of the page. I'll point out in particular that between 1992-93 and this current year, we had increased 3% the per pupil amount. You'll note that for the coming budget year, there is no increase in the per pupil allocation for this budget. You'll also see that within elementary, middle, and secondary, there are different lines for regular, gifted, and special. Regular ed students, in fact, all students receive or are credited for that regular amount, but in addition to that, 25% additional funds are earmarked for those students that are in the gifted categories, and 50% beyond the regular amount is allocated for students in other special education categories. We're anticipating about 440 additional students for 1994-95. Those will be spread out across the buildings, and those allocations will be made, and the principals will distribute those among those different expenditures that are assigned to their buildings.
My topic this evening, one of my topics this evening is staff development, and I would suggest to you before I start that strong curricular programs are really based upon finding the very best possible teacher candidates that we can find. And I think that we have often discussed with the board the time and energy that we put into that process. It takes us quite a long time every spring to find good teacher candidates. The second major element in a sound instructional program has always been strong curricular offerings. I think the board for many years realizes that we have a Goal 1 process, a process that over an 8-year cycle reviews every major program that we have, and that process is reviewed through committees of people, community members, administrators, and also teachers. If we have strong teachers and we have strong programs, then the third major element is staff development. I think we've learned from the experience of other districts, and our own experience certainly confirms the fact that the best of programs without training usually do not bear the kind of fruit we would expect in this district. And so that's essentially the rationale behind a staff development program, and I guess this is probably the 9th or 10th year that we've had a very strong effort. If you look on the page of your packet, you will find that our program activities are categorized in 3 major areas. The first being professional skills, the second being instructional technology, and the third being curriculum. Under the professional skills category, we have had for a number of years now a program called Elements of Effective Instruction. These are instructional practices that research indicates correlate quite well with effective instruction in the classroom. We probably now have somewhere in excess, I would think, of 500 teachers that we have trained. That number rises and falls over the years depending upon the number of new teachers that we take in and those that also leave North Penn for one reason or another. This is the place in the budget that carries the funds to support the in-service days, such as the ones we had Thursday and Friday last week, where we began the process of orienting new faculties to their responsibilities for next year. And we also began the work of team building with those teachers who will be leaving Pembroke, Penfield, and in some cases the junior high school to work in teams for grade 6 in elementary schools. There were similar activities at the junior high school and the 2 middle schools. Next year's budget will carry funds to continue the work of developing strong instructional teams in grades 6, 7, and 8. There are some funds to underwrite the cost of staff development experiences for the administrative staff as well. In instructional technology, I'm not going to go through every single item, but I'm going to try to highlight these. You will see that there is an increase of about $10,000 for training, most of it going into training seminars, because at a later meeting on the budget when we talk about equipment, you will see that there are some significant changes that we propose to make in the use of technology in the school system. For several years, we have had a program in the elementary schools from the National Geographic called the Kids Network. It is an excellent use of telecommunications. Over the years, we have expanded that program through grades 3, 4, and 5. Currently, we have used that program in selected 6th grade classes to give it a try to see what would occur. Next year, it's our intention to expand that to all 6th grade classes, so that will, of course, require some training. In-service courses are listed at a number of places on this page, and I'll deal with them in a moment separately. The area of curriculum has 2 major focus points to it. First is the Goal 1 curriculum review cycle, which I've alluded to earlier. And the second is that in a number of disciplines, there are always ongoing curricular projects and efforts. This year, you will notice under a number of the disciplines listed, all the way from art through tech prep, that there are a lot of course revisions. In art and business ed are 2 good examples. The middle school courses will need to be revised significantly to bring them into compliance with the program of studies that the board approved earlier. This is the year in which we also will begin to look at the whole computer education effort, K-12, and there will be a committee that will be doing that. The area of English and reading, we will begin the first year of a review of that total program, K-12. Dr. Terozzi will be leading that effort. Underneath that, there are other ongoing efforts that we've had for some time. We continue to develop the whole group, flexible group organization for reading instruction. We've continued to work on the student writing assessment. The board, I think, knows that we give the MAT test in writing. We think it is an appropriate test. We think that we at some point want to get to the point where we can do our own in-house assessment and no longer have to depend on outside sources. We've probably been at that project, I would say, a good 2 years. Dr. Terozzi is doing a lot of work in content area reading, particularly in the secondary schools. And finally, in the area of English and reading, the board recalls last year having approved implementation of the Reading Recovery Program. We have had Susan Durstein, one of our reading teachers at NYU, all year. Susan will graduate, come home in June, and undertake the training of our teachers in late August and then through the next 3 or 4 years. For the benefit of the public in regard to that program, I would like to say that the effort there is going to be dedicated to working with the 20% of our first graders, roughly 200 a year, who would be least effective readers. That program has had great success across the country. We think it is a significant program in that it may be a far better alternative than the remedial efforts we currently have underway. So that's quite exciting, and I will have some other comments to make about that as we get into other sections of the budget. Judy, do you want to talk about English as a second language?
Yes, in my area, there are other things that we do besides special education. English as a second language is one of those things that we handle under pupil services. We started a review last year, and we hope to be bringing recommendations forward to the board this fall. In the area of gifted, you'll recall in the beginning of the school year, the Gifted Task Force presented a report to the board, and we will be implementing an interdisciplinary course at the high school. This year, we will be seeing if modifications need to be made, and we'll be reviewing that program. In guidance, if you'll recall, we did our first Phase 1 report with the board in December. Right now, we're in the process of looking at the curriculum and picking materials. We hope to bring that forward to the board with recommendations in the fall of the 94-95 school year. One other area that we will be beginning is health. We have a committee selected so far, and we hope to have an initial meeting before the end of this school year, with a full review beginning in the beginning of next school year. So they are the areas that also fall under pupil services.
The areas of home economics and industrial arts, there will be some course revisions that have to be made in both of those areas. The library program review begins in 94-95. That will be a significant effort. There will be a committee of staff to do that. In the area of mathematics, I don't think we're looking at anything major in terms of course reviews, but we have a number of significant efforts that Mr. Decker is continuing to work with. He has a strong math committee that has worked on ongoing projects to do with assessment. They've done a lot of work on varying instruction for children of varying levels of ability. They have also continued to do a great deal of work to encourage teachers to use manipulative activities as a part of the math program. In music, there will be middle school course revisions. In social studies, there are the writing of the planned courses in grades 7 to 12. It's possible that we may not complete the writing of the planned courses kindergarten through grade 6 this year, and if we don't, that'll be carried over as well. Don, do you want to comment about tech prep?
Yes, just briefly, of course you're all aware of our tech prep initiative, and there's a lot of curriculum work going on over this summer and into next year in the area of applied sciences. We'll be introducing an applied biology course next year, you may recall. Also, presentation, principles of technology. There are many different courses that need attention and work in order for us to implement them properly. So there are some of the funds associated with this are devoted to the Tech Prep initiative. You also see under mathematics, applied math efforts are being undertaken by Mr. Decker and his staff. I'll also point out, even though we don't have it listed on here, that the science, some of the programs associated, some of the work associated with the Science Committee will be ongoing as well, and is associated, of course, with our Goal 1 effort there.
On page 4 of the packet that you have, you will find a listing of the proposed in-service courses for 94-95. There are 39 and 3/5 credits that we propose to offer. The current rate that we pay for those for people who instruct them is $525. So a 3-credit course costs the board $1,575. It often can serve 25 or more participants. If you compare that with the rate that you pay in tuition reimbursement, this is one of the best deals in town. We've had great success with these courses over time. They all make a significant contribution to strengthening our teachers' skills, which translate into better instruction for children in the classroom. Toward the bottom of the page, you'll notice that it lists induction, and it lists 3 3/5 courses, and then a series of topics. Rick Brash, who is the staff developer with major responsibilities for the inductional program, and I might add as a plug, does a fantastic job, offers those in seminar experiences for our people. They have been quite effective. The feedback on that is excellent. And one of the things that is frequently said about North Penn relative to beginning teachers, it's a great place to get started because there's a lot of support from people who are in the classroom for the first time. When you look in your budget page, you will also notice that the line that supports the induction program last year listed about $54,000. This year that line goes down to less than $26,000, and the reason for that is the effect of the mellow bill last year when we had a great many retirements and then consequently had to take on a great many more people than we will this year. On page 5,
Charlie, before you go over, just a quick question. Is it maybe I missed it, but the computer class, 13 credits, is that given multiple times?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we put it on offered twice under the...
Yeah, and Maxential should carry a number. What that really means in the area of instructional technology, there will be 13 credits between those two courses, and they will be offered several different times.
Great.
That's not as clear as it should be. The same thing is true up under Elements of Effective Instruction. It says 6. It's a 3-credit course. It's going to be given twice.
Yeah, that's clear, but this one wasn't.
Right.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. On page 5, I tried to deal with the dollars that support the program that we have outlined in staff development. I looked at the comparisons between the areas from last year to this year. You can see that the professional skills stays essentially the same. Instructional technology goes up quite a bit. That reflects increased attention in that area. Training that we think will be needed if the equipment purchases that will be proposed later in fact occur. Much of that training will be done with the people in the middle schools. Reading language arts reflects a downtrend, somewhat less money in that area. Reading recovery carries an appropriation of a little more than $29,000. I would like to point out that about $24,000 of that will be recovered because we will train 12 people this year. 8 of those are our own. We will also train 2 for Wissahickon and 2 for Colonial, and we will recover those funds. Actually, we'll recover $8,500 for each of the 4. Only $24,000 of that reflects itself here. Later, when I talk about some of the materials that we have to provide, I'll show you where the others would be located. Our math activities rise in cost somewhat from prior years. I've made a note that a little more than $13,000 of that, again, will be funded by Title II, which are federal funds passed on through Harrisburg to us. Science is a new effort, and I thought it deserved to be pulled out and highlighted a bit. It's just about $98,000 that the training will cost us, but I think the board will recall that when we reviewed the Merck proposal, we saw that we will get most of that back. Specifically, about $64,500 in that proposal is allocated to the staff development portion. The multicultural effort has been ongoing. There is a committee that functions in that area. There is ongoing training. It's about $1,000 less in cost than it was the previous year. If you look at all of that effort, it comes out to $227,465. If you were to look in the budget and try to find professional skills or instructional technology or reading language arts, you won't find it. I simply broke it out from the lines that are listed at the bottom of the page. There are 4 budget codes listed there, and it lists the attended costs. For example, The K-12 staff development line is where the funds that support the hourly rate and any substitutes that we would need for training purposes. The $3,500 is set aside for the training of the staff developers. And I would suggest to you that's money extremely well spent because we can send the staff developers off to see something in another area, learn how to do it, bring it back, and train our own people in-house. Purchase professional services, the $35,000 there pays for times when we bring people in to do work. It pays some of the tuition cost that goes with reading recovery and other items of that nature. Supplies for staff development are simply that, things that we need to run that program. Books and periodicals are, that supplies not only what is needed in staff development, but in every school. Every year there's an allocation that each school gets for professional periodicals, books, and that sort of thing. If you look at our costs compared to last year, they're up about 9%.
If I could direct your attention to page 6, we have a line item in the budget in the 1200 category, which is staff development for special education. Charlie mentioned many of the things that are happening in regular education, but we also have a lengthy list of things that are happening in special education. One particular area that I wanted to highlight is we had formed an IEP task force, and we finally computerized our IEPs, and we were very excited about this. We just found out from the state that they're changing their whole format, and they're computerizing IEPs that they will be giving to us. So we're going to have to meet and again redo what we had done earlier this school year. As you can see from the list, some of the hot topics that are going on with special education, especially early intervention, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tonight, is on that list. So $20,000 has been the budgeted amount that we've used for the past 3 years and has really met our needs. Under my area, in terms of early intervention, I've provided a lot of material for you on pages 7 through 13. But what I would like to do is highlight some information for you tonight. If you'll recall, on Tuesday evening, we had some brief discussion on early intervention as it relates to transportation. What's causing all the commotion is a federal and state mandate called Act 212. And by this particular act, the state's responsible for disabled children from the ages to 3 to 5-year-olds. The Montgomery County Intermediate Unit has been contracted by the state to provide programs for these children over the past several years, as have other intermediate units. We did some checking, and the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit has actually done this for 20 years. In the past 2 years, however, the state funds have not kept up the pace with the mandated programs, and I don't think this is a surprise to any of you. And this year in the governor's budget, early intervention is slated to be given to the local school districts as of July 1 or whenever the governor's budget is passed. If this happens this year, we are responsible to meet the state mandate for preschool education. And the shortfalls in funding beginning with the 94-95 school year would be paid for with local tax dollars. The intermediate unit provided some preliminary figures for us, and we are projected to receive $429,204. As of early March, there were 63 students projected to be involved in the program. And when I first saw this dollar amount, I thought, well, great, we'll have some money there. But after I started looking at the cost, that's a count of 3-1. It didn't specify any of the specific needs that these children would have, such as occupational therapy or physical therapy, speech and language, assistive devices, and it didn't even address the personnel costs. We will need such people as a social worker here to work with this program, supervision, teachers, and places to hold the programs. I went to a meeting on Tuesday with my counterparts in other school districts, and the IU has agreed to hold a meeting for us to discuss the nature and the disability of these particular children, who the service providers are, that's a mystery to us right now, and what it would cost to contract with the IU to provide the service for us. You'll recall that we are using contracted services with the IU since the special education funding has changed. I'm working with Dennis right now. We'll try to give you a clearer picture of what's going to be happening with the cost after I attend this meeting. My main concern with this is the time. We're to the end of April right now, and if they're talking about implementing a program in July 1, we simply are not going to be ready to do this. Now, at the last board meeting, you all signed a petition, and other school boards throughout Montgomery County have been asked to do this, to send information to the legislators to stop this, and hopefully they'll give us 1 year's grace period before we have to go forward with the early intervention. If not, we will have to implement this year. Donna, you had asked the other night about state mandates, and we are under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which was 94-142, the law, which safeguards the rights of handicapped students. So we are under a federal mandate to comply with this program, along with the state mandate.
Judy, last night at the MCIU meeting, we approved an expanded program for the summer for early intervention for the IU, and they're fully planning on taking it through the summer, even given that the law changes on June the 30th. Right now, there's not even the folks in Harrisburg understand how the transition's supposed to happen, and they don't know how they can expect the boards to be ready to do, the districts to be able to do the early intervention on 1 July if on June 30th it's a 12th hour pass the bill kind of thing. So they're still confused with that, and at least the IU is planning to keep the programs running, and I would assume that we would go through a contract basis.
Well, that's what we were thinking, but again, we don't know. We also heard that we will be required to pay transportation costs over the summer because the money has just run out.
Well,
So we're hoping that we hear some good news on that front in a couple of weeks because the clock's ticking.
they did pass out a committee that they were going to give us the funds for the transportation that
that's good.
had been missing from this year. We're not the only county, though, that went out, did the resolution. It's through the whole state.
Yeah.
So there are legislators, and Dennis and I are going to be meeting with Senator Greenleaf to really give him some numbers as opposed to just the resolution. But one fast question, are you going to come up with a number that would have to be added to this budget, because the state budget doesn't get passed until the end of June, it always has to be.
Dennis and I are working on that right now, but we don't even know the nature of the disabilities of these children. We could have children who may have a simple speech and language problem, all the way up to where a child is severe and profoundly retarded. And the level of service you provide is much different, plus you're looking at the related services that need to be provided, and that's another cost on top of. So it's a worry to all of us right now that we would be able to implement a program like this, given the time.
Yeah, the way the state allocated the budget was a strictly per pupil allocation in the total district, regardless of how many students you had who needed this service or how severely handicapped they were. So it made absolutely no sense in how they do it. And Norristown, for example, which has fewer students but more special ed needs, got less money than we did. So it's
The one scary thing, when we saw 63 and then we saw that it was the 1st of March, having lived through the changes in special education, lots happens here between March and the end of June. The other problem with this program is that it's a full year program. This isn't just conforming to 180 days, it goes year round. And we'd have to make provisions for
Rest
that.
assured, we're going to fight this as much as possible in every arena that we can find.
Judy, this is, you say this is a state mandate. Is it required that the parents bring forth these children?
We
You know,
have
here
to,
we have, you know, school age is what, 8 years of age? Are these parents required to bring these children forward?
well, what is done is a child find where you have to put out different kinds of information that programs are available. And then it's up to the parents if they bring these children forward, but certainly.
Okay, we're required to bring our children to school by 8 years of age. Are they required to bring the handicapped children in by between 3 and 5 years of age?
No, there is not a requirement, but
On the parent to do
on
this?
the parent to bring the child forward. If they opt to keep the child home, that's their decision,
that's
but that does not happen very often.
right. And understand too that it's the parents' responsibility to get them to someone that can identify them, that they need to be part of the program. And that's always identification, because some Usually it's through physicians or
Oh, yeah,
counselors, churches.
I'm assuming the severity of these children is such that the pediatrician knows almost immediately that this is a child that's probably a red flag.
And that's how they find out about them, and tell the parents and they get the parent and the IU folks together, but here again, there's nothing that says that they have to do it. And the whole idea is to get them in and get working with the children from ages 3 to 5 to help them before they become school age.
Rather than let's get back on task and get through the budget side. We know we don't know what's happening on this one. Let's talk about the stuff we know about.
Okay.
That's good, Rob.
Let's move on to the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Cost Plan. You'll find this on pages 14 through 17 of your packet. You'll recall in the year 1992, the change in special education funding by the state necessitated a change in the method by which we contract services. In previous years, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit received an allocation of money directly from the state to provide services for school districts. With the change in the flow of special education funds, money comes directly to us now, and we have to contract with Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for specific services. We provide a lot of different services for special education students here in the North Penn School District, but the need still exists for the severely disabled and low incidence populations to receive special education services from Montgomery County IU. In addition to the highly specific services that these programs have, we also have to provide related services for these children, and those are such things as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and hearing. In this cost plan, you're going to see our needs outlined as of May 1994. And I will be asking you to approve this during this month because it must go to the Intermediate Unit Board by May 27th. I have budgeted this year $760,000 under special ed funds for the Intermediate Unit. Now, if you look at that cost plan, you can quickly see that they are charging us $728,000. The extra money is in there because I know with enrollments that we will probably get another child at least registered here in the district that will need services outside of the district. So that's why you see the discrepancy in the budgeted amounts.
Judy, any more plans to bring back services here since we are growing and, to the point where we
That's something that we've been
do our own
looking at.
thing.
Dennis and I have reviewed some contracts from different school districts that have services. Now, we offer an autistic program here and one in communications disorders. However, we've had enough of our own children to fill those classes consistently for the last 3 years and not really have been able to take over any other children from school districts. But other school districts, such as Norristown, is running a program for severely and profoundly retarded. Now, their enrollments have been up, so they have not been able to take as many children from outside school districts. Hopefully, we will get to a point in time we'll be able to do this give and take more between the school districts.
But can we bring any home here and compete with that?
We looked at
Where
that
we
for
have
next
maybe
year.
close to a full class of
We
some
really
group or
don't
another?
right now. The one population we were looking at is perhaps a severe and profoundly retarded.
Okay.
And we will be looking at that again next year. Right now, we don't have enough to make up a class, and the nature of some of those children's disabilities is very severe. And where we would have to house the class, we need an awful lot for startup costs. Some of those children actually need water beds because of the spinal problems that they have, and that has to be built into the classroom, along with lavatories and other things. So we are looking at it. Hopefully, we will get to a point in time we will have enough to form a class, and it would be appropriate within a school setting.
I'd like to see us be more proactive in bringing some of these special groups back and selling the spots that we have available to others, and in a sense, be a provider or a vendor, including the alternative ed area. When you see a small outfit like Perkiomen Valley Academy taking in spots like this, we could do this. We could do this easy. Space is a problem, but we could do this. And I'd like to see us bring it home and be a provider and take in tuition spots.
We probably will look at the deaf and hearing impaired Donna first to see if that's appropriate, to see if we can phase them in.
That's our largest number, isn't it?
No,
21?
multi-handicap is our largest number.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, if we can move on to alternative ed. And I have provided information or a snapshot of alternative ed for you on pages 18 and 19. And I'd like to direct your attention to two particular columns for alternative ed. You'll recall that I usually provide the same chart for you every year. But I'd like you to look down where it says direct placements. These are the children that we actually place in alternative education programs. And you can see that from the year 88-89, we've run between 20 and 25 students consistently. I will tell you that makes me feel very good because I know in the school buildings the child study teams are doing a good job of identifying these kids and keeping it at a minimal number. Where you see an increase in the second column is for court-ordered placements. Now, we have little to no control over that. If a child runs into some trouble with the law, they become incarcerated and they're remanded to an alternative program, the courts will provide for the counseling piece, but we must pay the educational piece until that child is released. And you can see our numbers are jumping in that particular area, so that is a little bit of a concern to me. Again, we're talking about small numbers, 25 of our own students in alternative education, and then that has been consistent for a long time. If you turn to page 19, what I've tried to do for you is to give you a breakdown of the alternative education prices for the students. And you can see that the four main schools that we use for alternative ed are Lakeside, New Life, Community Service Foundation, and as Donna mentioned, Perkins and Valley Academy. And you can see what the breakdown of their prices are. Each one of these alternative schools brings forward some different things for children. So we use the child study team process to do appropriate placing of those youngsters. One other alternative education program that I just got the cost for today, so you don't have that in your packet, is the IU alternative program, and that is housed at the Simmons Elementary School in Horsham. That particular program has been for junior high students only, and we have 16 students in that program, and I will probably have 16 students in that program next year also. The cost for the 94-95 school year is $8,800 per student. We got a little bit of a break with transportation because they're located closer to us than where the program was located before, and that was at Central Montgomery Vo-Tech. So that gives you a picture of our alternative education program for next year. One additional category under student services, and you don't have information on this because it's only one line in the budget. For special funding, I have listed a $20,000 line item for guidance. As you know, we're under review in the guidance area, and we will be selecting materials for the curriculum. That will be brought forward to the board before we do any purchasing so that you can review those curriculum materials.
The next portion of the presentation relates to several programs and budget expenditures which are relative to the elementary schools. The first of those is math aids. We believe that two of the very basic things that our youngsters need to learn in the elementary schools is sound reading skills and also sound basic math skills. Reading and math, as you know, are taught in the classroom by every classroom teacher every day. There are, however, in both of those areas always some youngsters who are capable of learning math better than they do, but they need some additional work. For a number of years, the board has supported the use of aids to work with those children who are experiencing difficulty. This expenditure would support the use of those aids again in grades 2 through 6 in all 13 schools. The increase from about $128,000 to a little more than $150,000 reflects the fact that we're putting on the two new schools. You should know that this is about an hour and a quarter of time per grade per day in each of the schools. We don't run that the full 185 days. We run that about 172, 173 days of the term. We think that provides the additional opportunity for children in math that we have always provided for children in reading through a variety of reading specialists that the board has supported. There are, in the 1100 series of the budget, a series of special funding lines. In this district, given our size and the number of schools, we've learned long ago that it is more cost-effective to put certain materials in depositories and distribute them from there than it is to carry an excess number of books in each of the elementary schools, and then have the confusion that some principals are ordering materials while others have excess on hand. And that is true in such areas as math. In the elementary schools, there are consumable materials there for kindergarten, first and second grade. Next year, they will cost us approximately $44,000. Reading in the elementary school, the workbooks and the testing materials that go with it will cost us somewhat less. It goes down about $7,000 to $55,000. The reason for that is that more and more teachers are giving up the use of the workbooks that accompany the Holt Basel readers in favor of the black line masters, which we can run on the Xerox. That's a real benefit to us, because when you buy the workbook, which these days can run $7, $8 a copy, that's the cost even if you don't use all of it. Whereas with the black line masters, you can pull out those that you truly need, and so that's a savings. Spelling at the elementary level in grades 1 and 2 is done with consumable materials that will rise somewhat next year because of increased numbers of youngsters, and it reflects a lesser inventory carried over from this year into next year. It also reflects an increase in the price. The line that's labeled kindergarten at 13.7 has to do with providing the reading language readiness program called Once Upon a Time. It comes in booklet form, and every kindergartner uses one each year. The line labeled software elementary is where you will find approximately $5,000 to purchase software yet to be determined to support the social studies program in all the schools. You will also find the other portion of that appropriation is the CD-ROM software that would go to 6 of our schools next year, where we propose to expand the library networks that we began last year. Special textbook funding rises to about $180,000 for next year. I've tried to break that out in terms of the various subject areas. In such areas as English, it simply reflects additional text needed because it expands the inventory from what we have now to what we will need at various grade levels next year. Health, it's a matter of purchasing some additional textbooks to fill out our inventory, but it also reflects the fact that now that grade 6 is distributed across all 13 schools, 1 or 2 sets that were used as desk copies in each of the middle schools will no longer be adequate. We will have to put those materials into each school. Math and science represent, and spelling represent minimal purchases to fill out our inventories. That's also true of social studies, although the $17,000 figure would make it look as though it's more than that. It really isn't. It simply reflects the fact that in grades 4, 5, and 6, those books are increasingly expensive. The $44,000 for reading, that figure takes care of a number of things. It's a continued expansion of the number of texts that we need for the Holt and the Focus readers. About $13,000 of that amount will go into supporting the literature-based reading program, which is extending itself into grade 6. That breaks down to be about $1,000 per school. There is also some continued funding for the literature-based reading in the first grade and the junior grade books program, which is also part of the reading program at grade 6. Reading recovery. I mentioned earlier that we would be training 12 teachers for that effort. There are some very specific student materials, sets of booklets that go with that program. That's basically the $28,000 that's listed there. I should point out again that because we've sold some of the spots, we will recover about $10,000 of that $28,000 that is listed. It may seem strange to the board that we would buy materials for other people, but part of our contract with NYU is that we must guarantee that the people that are trained also have the materials to work with. So when I mentioned earlier that we were charging $8,500 a spot, it also includes the $2,500 for each of those people. Music looks like a rather significant amount of money at $36,000. We must purchase music texts for grade 6. It's the same argument that we had with health. 1 or 2 sets in each of the middle schools were quite adequate. However, now that we have them in 13 different locations, we plan to put 1 set of grade 6 texts in each of the 13 schools. We also need to replace those books, so next month we'll be coming forward with a new adoption for grade 6. Beyond that, it also provides for 1 set of music texts at every grade level, K-6 in each of the 2 new schools, Bridle Path and Walton Farm. And of course, along with that, there are some compact discs. The last time we bought music books, there were records that went with them. That's obsolete technology, so now we've moved up 1 notch. Art is less than $1,000. That simply represents the cost of some wonderful teacher manuals that we've come across that help art teachers tie art history, the works of masters, to projects that children can do themselves. And the last item under special textbook funding is dictionaries and thesauri, which are primarily going into grade 6 classes. At present, in the middle schools, there are a limited number of copies in each English teacher's classroom, but again, when you expand that to 13 different schools, then we plan to put approximately 15 dictionaries in each grade 6 and approximately 10 of the thesauruses. And believe it or not, it gets to be $18,000. They're not cheap. Moving on then to the new elementary schools. If you look on the left column, you will see that general supplies, books, AV supplies, and library supplies are the 4 areas that are covered by the per pupil expenditure that Don spoke about at the very beginning of this presentation. If we only allocated the per pupil amount for 2 new schools that are starting from 0, they would not be able to provide children with all of the materials that are needed. So therefore, we have increased those allocations somewhat to the figures that are listed. It would total up to be about $87,000, almost $88,000 per school. I think when we talked about this in the liaison sessions, Carmen, you asked the question, was that in addition to the per pupil allocation? And no, it's not. That's why I subtracted, in the case of Bridle Path, the $38,000, and in the case of Walton Farm, the $34,000, because those numbers would represent the allocation. So you can see that in one case, the board is being asked to provide an additional $49,000, and in the other, $53,000. The difference in the per pupil allocation amounts, of course, reflects the differing numbers of students between the 2 schools. The final item that I have, I list here for you to see, but it relates to the Merck Institute for Science Education. That proposal the board approved last month. It totals a little bit more than $215,000. Of that amount, Merck is expected to contribute a little more than 144. North Penn would contribute 71. If you look for the breakdown that's listed here, this is the breakdown that reflects the proposal. You won't find those precise dollar amounts in the budget because they're woven into a number of different categories. For example, the one I alluded to with science supplies and staff development that relate to this earlier. I believe that brings us to the co-curricular portion.
And I'll call your attention to page 21, where I have summarized the different categories that exist in the 3,200 account, and point out to you some significant changes in co-curricular expenditures, primarily because of our change at the middle school level, where we are, of course, adding additional 8th grade programs, and the expansion of that results in salary increases and other increases down those lines. I'll take a little bit of time and go through each of those lines, give you an idea of the kinds of things that are included there. In the salary line, an increase of about $85,000 reflects salaries for, primarily the salaries for increases in coaching stipends and in advisor stipends for various organizations that we'll need in those schools. But also included in the salary line are salaries for intramural chaperones, our athletic director at the high school, activities treasurers. It also incorporates the salaries associated with bus drivers for athletic trips and music trips, late buses, planetarium trips, our outdoor ed program. And this number is primarily that amount associated to all of our co-curricular activities across the system. That means our 8th grade programs, 9th grade, and of course the high school. Of that $691,000, the majority of that is for those stipends in the amount of about $445,000. The benefits are calculated by Dennis and show up there that reflect the increase associated with the increase in salary. The purchase professional services line is increasing to some degree, also associated with our changes in the middle school. This includes physician services, middle school sports officials, and athletic trainer services, which need to be expanded. The purchase property services changed just very little. That's a service that includes dry cleaning, athletic equipment repair, and rental fees. Other purchase services are football insurances, printing services, student and coaches travel, and a rather large and hefty increase, very evident in the area of supplies. The increases in this account are primarily due to the needs of purchasing uniforms and all the other supplies that are associated with the 11 sports. That's a very significant increase and is necessary in order to outfit the sports teams that we're planning to introduce. The property line includes equipment. Equipment increase is also rather dramatic because we're looking at additional $80,000 worth of equipment that will primarily be capital expenditures and is not going to appear in the general fund budget. That $90,000 is primarily for the various kinds of things that we need in the fields outside for the different kinds of sports programs. Also, you see a membership fee, which is a PIAA fee for the high school. In addition to the amount of money there, we also count on gate receipts. They're tough to predict sometimes, but typically from our high school sports programs, we gain $35,000 to $45,000 per year, and that is applied to cost for officials at the high school primarily, also for staff chaperoning of those events. It also is used for awards and membership fees. On the next page, page 22, is a summary of the additional co-curricular positions that we'll need next year in the middle schools. What you see indicated there are the number of additional positions, and of course, since 8th grade positions already exist, this represents an additional one for Pembroke and one for Penfield. One already exists, so this represents one more. The group assignment relates to the level of responsibility, length of season, etc. You'll see primarily differences between head coach and assistant coach, and most of those positions are related to Group 3 assignments. The estimated salaries are associated with the contracted rates that we have based on years of experience, and I chose a midline number to use there for the purpose of budget. You also see non-sport activities, the number of positions that we need to repeat these programs in both Pembroke and Penfield, and the amount of money that's associated with those, that total being about $78,000. And we have also incorporated in the total amount the 3.2% increase that we've used throughout the budget for staffing increase. We also have special funding lines at the secondary level, and there are 4 categories that I want to talk about, referring to page 23 in your pack. The 4 lines are for supplies, software, textbooks, and library books for this coming year. Under the supply lines, the different departments that are listed there refer to consumable workbooks primarily that are used for the courses that we'll be introducing at the middle school level. In our new business computer ed courses, we do have some consumable workbooks that we'll be using. Vocabulary books are the primary consumable purchase in the English program. In foreign language also we use consumable materials associated with the text. You'll see in the math category, both at the middle school and at the high school, TP, which indicates tech prep, and these are supplies and workbook materials associated with textbooks that will go along with the introduction of applied math programs at those levels. In reading, there are associated support materials that are identified there, and in technology education, there will be consumable supplies as well. At the high school level, the supply lines at the business department are primarily related to accounting and other business courses, English vocabulary, foreign language workbooks, and the math tech prep program. Secondary software costs are down slightly, but that amount reflects the needs that we have for labs that will be introduced, we hope, at the middle schools and for various department requests from the high school. The textbook lines, the textbook line I'll indicate to you is being reduced somewhat, some good news associated with this report. In the business computer line that's listed there, our textbook needs have been reduced, and of course we continue to refine some of these textbook needs as our enrollments become more refined through the course selection process. But in the business computer area, we're only going to need $10,310, not $19,000, so we can make a change there. In the area of English, this reflects needs for additional grammar, vocabulary books, and literature books, and we have made changes in the levels of instruction at the middle school as part of our reorganization plan. This reflects the need to have enough books in different levels that will exist. A small amount for ESL texts, foreign language. This primarily reflects an increase in enrollment, which we're happy to see in some respects, but there's certainly a cost associated with that. We're seeing about 200 more students enrolled in foreign language courses for the coming year. In health, these reflect costs for class sets and textbooks across the 7, 8, 9 program. Same thing with home economics. In mathematics, those again are costs associated with level changes primarily, most of the costs associated with having enough books in the 7th and 8th grade programs. The other reduction, a rather significant one, is in the area of reading, and that will be changed from $37,800 to $18,100. And those are primarily for our literature, junior grade books, our basal reader programs at Holt and Focus, and some dictionaries. Also in tech ed, there are some textbooks that we'll be using in the program that will exist at the middle schools. In foreign language, we have been purchasing a series of foreign language textbooks in recent years, and this is a continuation of that process. The money that's allocated here is for 4th level German and 2nd year Spanish. In science, next month we'll be coming to you with textbook adoption. This amount reflects a serious need that we have in the honors biology program that some of you have mentioned before, and we'll be requesting a new book for that at this point. We certainly will plan to continue with honors
1994.
biology. I hope so. In social studies, this is a continuation of the purchase from last year. We have went through some transition time and it was necessary for us to delay the purchase of some of the books until we had these programs firmly in place. We're also experiencing some growth at the high school, and those costs are associated with the purchase of government textbooks, also with economics and sociology. We're also seeing a rather dramatic increase in students choosing elective semester courses at the high school level, and this hopefully will cover the expenditures there. So we see that amount reduced by about $28,000, and we'll reflect that.
Judy, could you turn back to page 18 if you would? I'd like to ask a few questions about the kids dearest to my heart. Under court-ordered placements here, 42, we pay the educational component. County pays incarceration or whatever
Right.
there is. How does the cost of that education compete with these alternative ed over here? These kids are incarcerated, correct?
Well, they're remanded to an alternative program for a period of time.
Okay, so they're not, this isn't like paying for the educational component like St. Gabe's or something like that? This
No.
is not in lockup?
No, no.
Okay.
It depends on what they've done, and
Right.
they would send them to one of these four.
Okay.
And they would receive the intensive counseling there, and that would be picked up by the Department of Public Welfare. But we are still, because they're still listed as our students, responsible for the educational piece.
Regardless of the fact that if they were here with us, it would be the cost of, what was $7,300 for one student?
Right.
But they do not even pick up the difference when they court-ordered them to one of these places?
They only pay for the counseling component of that program.
Any of these residential day schools?
No.
Do they?
They're all
Okay.
day schools, but the students don't stay overnight.
Okay.
They come home.
All right. The 16 junior hires at Simmons, the alternative ed kids, are they governed by the same special ed classroom size dictates that we have?
They're not under special ed, they're under regular education for alternative ed students.
So this is basically one classroom of these kind of kids?
Right. Now, they're small class size. Vicki went with us to visit a few of them, and they can run anywhere from 6 to 10 students.
Right.
Given the volatility of some of those students, you wouldn't want any more in a classroom, so they are very small class sizes. But there is no specific rule or regulation that says they must be under 10.
They might be gathered for a special
Right.
event.
Okay. How many rooms do the kids at Simmons take up? Or 16, they take up how many rooms?
Well, they
To
have,
operate 16
they
of
have
these.
sort of a suite of 4 rooms,
Okay.
and they use all 4 of them. There is also at the Simmons School an early childhood program in the other end of the building. It was an elementary school at one time.
Okay. Don, page 22, sports coordinator.
Yes, right now we have an athletic director,
Right, Don?
which is an ex-duty position at the junior high school in Rittenhouse, and we will need one at each of the 3 buildings next year. Their primary responsibilities are readying the fields, arranging schedules, securing officials, making arrangements for transportation.
Isn't that clerical? We're calling them a sports coordinator?
Some extra duties.
Yeah, I
Not
know.
really.
It's another,
It's far from clerical. There's a lot of work that they do with the league officials. They have league meetings, planning meetings.
You gotta put the
developing
soccer teams on the
schedules,
soccer fields.
contacting officials. It's more than clerical.
okay. Does Doc keep, at the high school, or is there on the secondary level, demographics of how many kids are actually participating in sports programs? The reason I'm asking is because unless things have drastically changed, you have the same core group of jocks that play everything. They play a sport a season. Are we reaching out with this kind of diversity and the type of sports we have and the number of sports we have, are we reaching kids, new kids, other kids?
Well,
It was always the same kids.
Yeah, certainly there are students who are going to participate in more than one event.
Right.
Very involved.
They're going to take one a season. Let's say
Athletics.
there's 3, okay.
But the fact that we would have 2 teams, for example, in 8th grade is going to expand the opportunities dramatically for those kids to participate. I would anticipate that right now we have about 400 students, about 770 students who participate in the athletic programs at the junior high school. With 2 8th grade teams, I hope we will be able to come close to doubling 8th grade participation. 400 8th grade students, boys and girls, who participate right now.
Okay.
Our hope is to at least provide the opportunities to be able to
Right. Well,
increase that. It's hard to say.
if they can't find it here, God help them.
That's right.
Between the community that's, chock full of opportunities and what we provide here, good luck. But anyway, I guess the number that I'm really looking for is you take the total number in the school. How many children, backing out there, those kids that are participators, how many kids do not participate in anything, sports or non-sports? Kids that do not take advantage of all of this.
Well, and that would be involved beyond athletics.
Kids
as
that
well.
come to
You're
school and
talking
go
about
home or
music,
go to work.
The whole program.
Right. No extras.
We have those kind of statistics. I'll have to talk to Don and to David about getting some of that information in the detail you asked for.
Okay, I think I read something in Night Crier. I think they asked a question to that effect, and I was surprised at the number of kids that do not, which means there's a considerable number of kids that overlap and kids that are in everything. God love them, but I mean, they're in everything, and they may as well be. If we're going to offer it, they may as well take it. But I mean, there's a core group that does everything, and there are kids out there that do nothing but come to school and go home and go to work. That's pitiful.
Despite the fact that we have a wide variety of activities,
Right.
that's an issue. Well, certainly, many of our most active students are involved in possibly in a couple different sports and a few clubs and student government. Many of them do take advantage and get involved as much as possible. And of course, we encourage that at every level.
Right.
Yeah, perhaps we could get you a yearbook, and then you could go through and see which students don't participate.
Well, I don't think that would be my job, Mr. Bowman. We'll get somebody who's paid to do it.
Oh, okay. You're not paid for this job?
Dr. Bond, did you?
I happen to have that information. I'll be happy to provide it.
Thank you, sir. Seeing that the fine doctor is here, just a question here about tech prep. Don, do you have a total number of dollars that we could directly relate to the tech prep program?
Well, that's kind of difficult. I mean, we could count all the supplies that we're going to purchase and the books that we're going to purchase.
Just a ballpark. I
But then
don't want
there's
paper clips. I just want a ballpark.
Well, in the budget right here, I show about, I think, about $8,000 or $10,000 associated with special line items and supplies and textbooks. In addition to that, we've earmarked some funds in the
Training.
curriculum side of staff development to pay teachers to be involved in the development of those programs. In addition, there are some funds that come through the tech prep initiatives that Dr. Bond has spoken about on several occasions.
Right.
That we'll be able to use for that. So right now, those costs, probably around $12,000 to $15,000 in the area of staff development and some of these materials. But we also know there's also some other things that are planned in the staff development piece that aren't reflected here that are being accommodated by some of the grant funds that we get for our involvement in it. So it's bigger than that. And some of it's general fund and some of it's from grants.
I just for the
Could you
benefit
pull
of
together the tech prep money from around the budget? Is that doable for like next Thursday?
I can do that as it relates to materials and books and staff development. As far as
Staff.
teaching assignments and so forth, that's difficult.
I think what we're looking at, what are we spending to develop the tech prep program?
I know that there's going to be colleagues on the board that are going to ask this, and as we all sweat and worry about this budget, I want to put my 2 cents in now that I'll go to the mat for this group and for this program, because these are the kids that are long overdue for their piece of the pie, not just the money pie, but the attention, the focus, the limelight, and everything that goes with it. These are the kids that don't get their piece often. And so as everyone's looking around for a place to cut, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep anything from happening to this program or this group of children. So,
Don, when you develop the middle school courses under staff development for home ec and industrial arts, is part of that going to be a tech prep type of program also?
Not directly attributed to that, except at the high school because of principles of technology. So we are
Right.
going to have to be careful as we analyze this to give you a representative figure.
You want to make sure that
At the
you
middle
divide them?
school, the tech prep, or the technology ed initiative is really our former industrial arts program, now known as technology education.
Is that going to be revamped at all to gear more towards the applied? I'm not quite sure, how it is right now,
Well,
but
it's a
try to
focus.
move towards a more 20th century type of way of
Yes,
looking
it
at it.
is. And in fact, next Tuesday night, when we talk about some of the capital
Okay.
expenditures, Mr. Bateman will be here, and he'll talk about that program and what we would like to do with it.
Fred?
Yes, Bill?
Fred?
Yes. I'm with you.
Okay, thank you. A question on salaries or benefits for teachers. When you budgeted benefit costs, did you take into consideration any copay by the
Yes.
teachers?
Yes.
Yes.
We
did.
We considered, and Dennis will correct me if I'm wrong because he's the one that did this, but we have considered the position that we're at in negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
So as I understand it, based on the way we did it last year, we will have to correct at it if there is no contract settlement by the final budget,
Yes.
just so that we all recognize.
Judy, I'm sorry.
I'm done, thank you.
Judy, you have the whole list of the in-service courses for special education. Do those dollars for that in-service, is that in the budget?
Yes,
On-
20,000. It's the total cost of that whole package.
Okay. I was asking if it was on the other page about the...
No, it's not there,
total
Dave.
staff
You would find that in the 1200 series where
Right.
special education is listed.
development.
Don?
Yes.
Okay. There's another one coming, but it's not coming out.
Okay, Don, in the budget, I see under the category of student activities, there's the
What
music
page, Vicki?
department trips, it's on page 101 of the regular budget. Under music department trips, the budget's increasing there approximately 75%. It's going from 14,250 to 25,000. And I'm wondering, does this involve strictly student music department or
Strictly
conferences or?
Strictly student, it reflects an increase for high school, with increased costs and salaries for drivers for high school trips. That's all the competitions that they're involved in. And it also includes an increase because, it includes a ninth grade marching band and other kinds of music department trips that we anticipate in the new 7-8 schools. It'll be more so than what we currently have in 6th and 7th grade, although we're not planning marching bands in the 7-8 schools. It does reflect an increase in the amount of trips that will be taken by those groups.
Have you done any calculations on what the cost, overall cost is evolving to be with the separation of 8th from 9th grade? Having, the separate programs as it's going to be this year, having, just 9th over there at the junior high and having the 8th graders spread out?
To tell you the truth, we've done all the budget calculations, almost all of them, with the assumption that we would have 3, 7, and 9 schools, and of course, that would have been quite a bit more in this budget to accommodate 3 9th grade programs and 3 8th grade programs. Right now, what we have in this budget reflects a doubling of the 8th grade programs and an expansion of the non-sport programs in these schools. However, it does not reflect what we had originally for 3 marching bands, for example. So these numbers were modified significantly when we decided to go with the interim plan for the coming year. Now, assuming we are in 7, 8, 9 arrangement in 95, 96, you'll see those numbers reflected both for sports and non-sport activities.
But you have a number that we've worked on that says what we've increased for
What
putting the
is
8th graders in. I think we have a number
Right.
somewhere,
Right.
and you could come up with that.
What impact has the new program of studies brought into the budget? Did you see any there as you were calculating?
Well, we did,
With the
we did
reductions
add
of
some
electives?
additional courses, and some of those course development costs and textbook and supply costs are reflected in some of the lines that I talked about with you earlier. I don't have it broken out by course, but since everything is listed pretty much by department.
I just also noticed here, when looking through these student activities and following along with, it's following with the lake buses and the outdoor education trips and everything, but I'm finding salaries here listed, as of this current year, we're looking at approximately $596,000. And it's basically been estimated to increase approximately 95,000, 97,000.
Approximately. If you look at the amount of money on these co-curricular positions on page 23, you can see that represents a total of 78,000. All of those calculations are based on current contract figures. And as Mr. Schmidt mentioned earlier, we've been using 3.2%, so you need to add that on to that 78,000. You can see the impact of the additional 8th grade positions by doing that. And that is, mid-80,000 range.
And I want to be clear that this budgeted figure of $691,867, that is the co-curricular budget. That is simply after-school staff salaries for extra duty pay?
The $691,000 includes, as I mentioned earlier, $445,000 of that is associated with coaches and advisors for all the organizations we have in the entire system. A huge portion of that is the high school. In addition to that, we also, the salary of our athletic director and the salary of drivers for all the different transportation needs that we have for music and athletics. All of those are included in there. That also is where we budget our transportation for late buses, for field trips, for planetarium trips in the elementary program, for outdoor ed. It's all of that.
But I just wanted to be clear, because I see custodial staff, is that just related to special curricular items, or is that the full custodial? That's what I'm trying to be sure, that this is all related to
It's all related to after school.
That really is a term that's used to summarize that category. Dennis would need to answer that question.
Because I didn't know why that
term.
custodial staff of that size is there specifically.
You're looking at the 190 right there? It says
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not
If
quite
you look
sure
at it,
if I used
that 109 is an additive of the late buses, Penfield, Pembroke, Penndale, music trips, athletic trips. So that's an additive of that, and it seems kind of a
Custodial
weird way to
seem
put
very
that, doesn't
descriptive,
it?
though.
Yeah.
It's not custodial.
And
That
it's,
meaning
Yeah.
of custodian.
it doesn't mean.
It's not that meaning of custodian.
101.
Oh, okay, it is the collection of there, okay, because
It's
that's
a collection of
also
all the
what-
190 series numbers, which is what all the late buses, salaries, and all that stuff is.
Right, and the title
Yes.
just didn't seem to fit the category.
There's actually,
There's a
of the
39.
series, it's 197 for those, how they're allocated, but it's the total for the 190 series is the 109,000.
Staff, so her salary's not included there.
So her salary is above that because she isn't teaching. She wasn't teaching a
Right.
class, so her salary is above that.
But we will pick up about half of her salary through Chapter 2 funds.
Okay. And for next year, she's going to be actually teaching other support staff, so she's not going to be teaching in the classroom again.
She will be spending half of every day teaching or training teachers. The other half of the day, Susan will be teaching youngsters at the Bridle Path School in reading recovery.
Okay. On the $10,000 books for the reading recovery, the 8,500 that we were selling the slots for, that's inclusive of those books?
Yes.
So the 2,400 covers the instruction and the book. So the cost of the reading recovery to date is close to $150,000 when you take, you've got 36
If you include
salaries and
yes. Yeah.
And that's
And I
just,
think if you go back to the proposal that we made, more than a year ago, we projected that out over several years, what that was going to cost.
and how many first grade students are there now?
There are, I think by fall we'll have about 1,000.
So you have 1,000, but this program's only going to be in
20% of them, when it's fully implemented. So the board needs to understand that full implementation is going to take a couple of years because to train those people.
Right.
It means that we will train just about all the reading teachers we have over time to do that.
But only 20% of the 1,000 children?
Yeah, we think that the national figures show about 20% of your population, which in our case would be approximately 200.
That's a hefty bill for 200 children.
But I pointed out when we approved the proposal, if this is effective, it would reduce our costs long-term in remediation, including many children who now don't learn to read and are currently classified as learning disabled. I don't want to make too many claims that might not be substantiated, but the figures from other centers that have done this indicates that those populations do decrease. So that's where our savings will come. Not up front. Up front, it's costing us money, no question about it.
Catch the problem before it becomes one.
Well, that's the theory.
Don, back to the, is Carmen done? I'm sorry. Carmen, are you done?
No, go ahead.
You sure? Okay. Don, back to the extracurricular sports again and non-sports areas. Certainly wouldn't want to see anything really happen here, of course, to this area. Certainly gave me a reason to get up in the morning and come to North Penn many years ago. But has secondary staff, have they come up with any creative ideas in fundraising or offsetting some of these costs here? I know user fees and things get thrown out from time to time. Has there been any really serious discussion of creative ways to offsetting some of this? I mean, the community's doing a good job at it.
We've had discussions on a couple of occasions about user fees for offsetting the costs of some of these programs. The only thing that we have in place at the moment are gate receipts, which just offset some of the costs that are beyond what you see here.
Well, I'm getting, I'm just a little nervous that, not just to yourself. I see many areas throughout the entire school district that we can do a little fundraising or marketing some of the goods that we have, or being able to recoup some fees associated with specials like this. And we're getting all the gross numbers here, but we're not getting any creative ideas to offset some of this. And I don't know if people are waiting for the board to come up with them or what, but some serious discussions on things that get thrown out once in a while have to be had by the right people. There was talk at one time about taking Friday night football games for reasons of cost and reasons of security to Saturday afternoons or Saturday games. When are we going to get some serious conversations on some of these things that we could probably benefit from in many ways, not just financial ways, and do them real soon?
There was a board discussion, I forget whether a year or two ago, about user fees, and the decision at that time was not to introduce them.
Okay, well, 2 years ago, we were discussing our income tax, and now we're back to it again, so now it's time to have real discussions again on things, because this budget is a sucker, and we have to, a bloodsucker, and we're going to have to, I think, get a little bit more creative. I see the gross numbers are in, and that I recognize.
Isn't that our decision to make, Don? A board? Not sure.
It's all, I think it's our.
We have to set the policy that we want to make money or break even on it, and that's up to us to do, not them to do, unless we ask them to.
We can certainly gather information on it, but certainly it's up to you.
Well, one of the things is pay for play, and that's been something that we kicked around last year, and whether you want to go into it totally this year again, that's that's something that the whole board has got to decide as a consensus. But there, as Donna says, there are some other alternatives. There's some corporate sponsorships for some teams also, which is how some of the uniforms and such get handled at the local level. You know, I'm not sure what the law, you know, incorporates in that.
Well, I know, community, I mean, I know what I'm paying for my kids to be in Squires and this and rah-rahs and everything else. I know what I pay for entry fees, uniform fee. I mean, I pay all that now. You'll say, oh, but what about the kids that can't afford it? We always take care of the kids that don't afford it. That will be seen to by philanthropic folks. That'll be seen to. But kids and families are paying for things in the community now. And then the schools offering the same sort of things. And, you know, when kids want something, they find money to get it. And I just feel that we need to get a little creative here and maybe recoup some fees. I mean, we're even trying it on teachers, the thought of co-paying on something. So, you know, if we can get fees off of teachers for things like benefits, you know, maybe we can get some sneaker money here or something. But really, just some cost sharing, You
know, 5 years ago, just so I think Donna, when she's stepping on a touchy situation here, but 5 years ago, this budget for student activities was $607,455. I know we've got inflation here, but it is now $1.2 million. That is a doubling of that expense in a very short time. And I think that perhaps before it gets, you know, does get into a threatening situation, there should be some look, if not at of course, eliminating anything that's valuable to the children, but looking to see what can be done to maintain it efficiently before, if it continues to spiral at that rate, I don't see how the district wouldn't end up in a crisis situation.
Remember, though,
the way
that
budgets are going.
In between that, there were increases in salaries also, so that 5-year also includes some hefty increases that were in there. So I mean, if you were to do it from the end of the contract, you know, to now, then that's a different situation. But you know, it's the cost of living is
doubled. It's, you know, still
We have more students and more clubs and more teams. And
If we want the administration to get information, I need to know what to ask them for, or we're just gonna talk about it Thursday.
you want to talk about it next Thursday, or
Yeah, 'cause
you
we're
want
running
Don to come up with some data?
Creative recommendations from the cabinet would be appreciated.
Yes.
How about,
I agree.
how about so that you can channel your focus a little bit? How about looking at the different events that we have in terms of sports teams? What's the allocation between how much we spend on uniforms, how much we spend on coaches, how much we spend on equipment and supplies, those kind of things, and break it out maybe that way, by team or by athletics and by extracurricular.
We'll find a way to break it out.
Break it out.
Doing it that way may be pretty difficult, but
On the
there
senior-
may be some ways we can associate a total cost with a particular sport.
It would also
That's what
help.
you're saying.
Well, to get to a total cost, you've got to add some things together to get to the total cost. Just show us that, and then we can, I think what is going to happen is we're going to end up nickel and diming it. It's shown that even getting participation fees back is not going to be
It doesn't have a
worth
big
the hassle.
impact, at least in the last time we discussed it.
I thought the last time it was discussed, Don, that it would represent about $60,000 in revenue.
That's right.
And
Okay, if it's-
Vicki, if you indicated it's $1 million to $60,000 in user fees, I
I
thought
know,
that it
I
was
think
about a
it's-
$25 fee per student per activity.
I'm just saying
About
whether if you
62,000.
look to
Was
see
it about
what's
62 then?
driving it, though,
I just
whether
did the
it's
math.
the extra duty pay scale or whether.
But if it's so de minimis that it's not worthy of being discussed or pursued, then why do colleges do it? On the secondary level, this is not a faraway concept to what we pay when we go to college our freshman year. Here's the activity fee, here's this participation fee.
Some districts in the area do charge a student activity fee. It's not, you know, it can clearly be done, but it doesn't raise a lot of money. I mean, it's not, you know, you're gonna get $60,000, not $1 million.
I would say most of the districts in this area at least considered some form of user fee in the last few years.
And
Some of them continued with that for a year or two and dropped it, others never pursued it, pretty much like we were a couple of years ago. Others are still doing it. I don't know the extent of that as it exists in
in surrounding
Were
districts.
there
I think
other
if we're-
questions? I want to get it down to where we can let the audience
I
have
had a
some
question
questions.
for Don. Under co-curricular activities, you mentioned on supplies from 95,000 to 307,000. I think on that you said mostly uniforms?
Primarily, but
Okay.
everything, all kinds of things associated
Right.
with that.
But my
Football is a
question,
very big one.
my question would be is, okay, if we're gonna keep ninth grade, or ninth grade's gonna be at Penndale, but then we're gonna keep the middle schools the way they are. Next year, once we make them all equal, will the uniforms that are bought, like let's say for next year varsity the ninth grade football team, are these uniforms for ninth grade football team, these will be bought, that they'll be able to use them next year?
Well, the supply lines includes all the supplies across the system, including the high school. High school is about 70,000 of that total, of that 300,000. And the remaining amount is for outfitting the eighth grade teams and any additional things we need, the ongoing annual supplies for the ninth grade program.
But yeah, my question would be is, are you gonna be coming back next year then to outfit again all the
Yeah.
teams?
They're going to have 2 ninth grade teams and 1 eighth grade team to outfit next year,
Beyond what's
beyond what's here. So it's going to be big
So it
again
could be
next year.
substantial again next year?
correct.
Okay. Can't you buy them big?
Well, you know, one of the things we do intend to do is buy common uniforms so that we can share them from school to school. As we get different numbers of students that try out, we'll have some kind of distinction that indicates a difference between Pembroke and Penfield, but we're looking at basically the same color uniforms, blue and either off blue or white for all of the schools, and home and away obviously would be different, but in some kind of indication to distinguish one school from the other by color. So we'll net, there's some savings there. It's a little more expedient to do it.
Armbands.
Tom, we did think about just putting a PF, a PD, and then a Velcro letter and pull off the D or the B or the F.
You might need those.
You might have to.
When it comes down to it, we're still splitting the cost. If we would have gone the full-blown program this year, would have all been here. Now we get to divide it over 2 years. I mean,
Right.
it's shifted
Exactly.
slightly.
Can we finish it
Now
off
it's 2
then
years instead of-
at the, what you're gonna look for as far as the co-curricular is going to be, what other schools do co-pay and other things, and possibly corporate sponsorships of some of these programs and things of that nature, and see what the law leaves you as far
I
as
think
getting.
we'll look at some ideas, but I've lost a little bit track of exactly what you want me to come back with here.
Okay, well, maybe Ralph
More direction
has
if
written
I
it
can.
down.
Just
and
looking at the
correct
cost
it.
right now for the various programs in total, and then we'll break it out for you. I can't really see our shirts having North Penn on the front, and Joe's Bar and Grill on the back.
I don't know, Coca-Cola sounds good. They pay for a lot of stuff.
We're going to look at the participation fees again, some information on that.
All right.
I would suggest, based on the comments here, that we get a breakout of that $307,900 of supplies, just so we can see what they are, okay?
And the 90,000.
And, okay,
And
the
the property.
90,000 property as well?
Property you'll hear about next Tuesday.
Okay, that is, my question, one of my questions was, this 90,900, is that capital?
That's capital.
Okay. Thank you.
Question?
Okay, do we have other board questions?
Yes. Sorry.
Carrie?
Charlie, Don, can I have dollars per school instead of, we have per pupil?
And it depends on how many special ed gifted and all that.
Yeah, we can produce that. We will need to make some revisions in that as we do every year. The initial figures were based on the data that came out of the attendance areas. When we revised that and straightened that all out, those numbers are somewhat higher. So therefore, the dollars budgeted in those lines are somewhat higher too. They will come down a bit. We will produce that. I'm not sure we're going to have that by Thursday, but somewhere in the process, we will get that to you.
Not exactly. It doesn't have to be exact for what I want.
On the reading recovery, you said 20% of the students,
Yes, first grade.
20% of the first grade students. If a child is borderline, if he needs the help, but we're at 21%, if we take him in, do we take him in anyway? We're not drawing a hard line at 20%.
No, he's just
It's not a
estimating.
hard, that's an estimate.
It's an estimate, there's 20%.
When do we break even on reading recovery?
Well,
I don't know at this point. To be candid, I don't know.
on math manipulatives.
Yes.
No offense, David. We spend a lot of money in math manipulatives, and I know it's important for the kids to see the numbers. I mean, I taught my son subtraction with math manipulatives.
Okay.
But I used milk bottle tops. And you can get 2% and 1% in whole milk and have different colors to signify different things, and just have people bring them in from home.
Well, these go beyond, well beyond just counters. These are Unifix cubes. These are, well, they're blocks that people can put together. These help kids determine the difference between ones, tens, hundreds, thousands.
Yeah, can't we just?
Did you ever go try to put 100?
No, I only used
100 bottle caps on a kid's desk in first grade.
We only went up to 30.
Yeah, there are a variety of things, including things such as when you want to demonstrate fractional parts. There are flannel pea, all that kind of thing. Big, neat figures. Terry, I would suggest that we have not, in fact, spent a great deal of money. We spent a rather modest amount of money over the last couple of years in doing that. And David has very carefully shopped for those materials and made sure that some things that aren't used frequently or limited quantities are put in buildings and that kind of thing.
All right. Books and periodicals for, I guess it's staff development? I think that's what my note says. Are these for the teacher students that are attending the class?
These are for use by teachers. These are...
during their class that they are attending?
No. These are journals, for example. There are some, the Arithmetic Teacher, which is a publication of the National Council of Teachers in Math, is a journal that is put in elementary schools, and teachers refer to that in the staff room, go through it, find better ways to teach concepts, that kind of thing.
Are
There's
these
some science journals, there are reading journals.
One per building?
Yes.
On the dollars in transportation for like music trips and stuff like that. I bought an awful lot of hoagies last year. I thought that was to help the kids get to Florida.
No, that's apart from that.
What is
That-
they
that's an
raising that
airplane
money?
flight anyway.
What?
We didn't cover any airlines. But those are
We're now down
the
to
costs
police
that we
coming
have
on.
What are the
paying for
kids raising
transportation
the money
using our
for?
buses.
I thought it was for their trip. I assume transportation.
No, it's primarily for the costs associated with some of the
Entry
trips,
fees?
like the major trips, the choral trip to Disney World.
Entry fees and stuff, or?
Actually, that's assigned to the supply lines for the most part.
Size of Terry's family, should finance pumping in.
And what happens with drama sales? Where does that money go?
That
Is that
goes
like
to
gate
pay
receipts
for
to-
proceeds from our recent spring
Right.
production at the high school.
Goes
For example,
to-
goes to cover the costs of putting that production on.
Do we make
All
a
of the
profit
stage
on it?
work, the costumes. No, not usually a profit.
Do we break
The
even?
money that we make, will that go back into the
Really stays within an activity fund that accommodates drama productions year
Do
after
we
year.
add more money into the fund?
Sure.
We
Or
don't.
does it
It does not come out of the general fund budget, no. It comes, there's an activity fund for drama. That activity fund is maintained year after year. Hopefully, the receipts from the
Is it
production will,
self-sustained?
for the most part, yeah. We pay for the advisor and people that work on it.
Last question. We talked about this last budget, I think, on uniform cleaning. It surprised me that we, the district, clean the uniforms, and the answer was something to the effect of, we want all the uniforms cleaned and whatever for our,
Certain uniforms
parades or
must
whatever.
be dry cleaned, and we do it in a bulk, like the band uniforms.
well, if a child was expected to take care of his own uniform, to pay for it, to dry clean it, to keep it clean, and with the requirement that it must be dry cleaned before certain events or whatever, wouldn't that increase his self-esteem? His sense of value to what he's doing?
Not if you can't afford to pay for it.
Well, we always take care of the ones that can't afford.
I mean, that's,
Self-esteem if he doesn't.
Well, yeah, that's another way to look
It
at the
beats
concept of
off-the-shelf
user
self-esteem.
fees, quite frankly.
Hmm?
That's another way to look at the concept of user fees, paying a fee to cover a component of the program, whether that be for cleaning uniforms or for purchasing supplies or offsetting the costs of officials or advisor stipends.
I mean, we said that user fees or whatever only brought in 60,000, but 60,000 here and 60,000 there is now 120,000, and maybe if we looked at a bunch of different little creative ways and took care of the children that couldn't afford it, that it would also give the child a sense of importance about himself that is earned.
We talk about that next Thursday when Don brings back the info.
I'm just going through my questions. Thank you. That's all.
Well, we know where you're going.
I have a few questions. I will ask them Thursday, because we do want to have some time at least here for the public to address us. Looks like one person, two if they're fast, maybe three. Is anybody from the public who would like to address on the items that we've covered tonight in the budget hearing? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bob Graziano from Tolmenson. My interest tonight is in elementary level. I have 2 children in elementary school. We have 2 new schools coming online, and we're moving the 6th grade into the elementary level. And I see a number of increases, librarians, art, music, phys ed, reading, special ed, guidance. One place, it kind of disturbs me, I see no change in gifted. Although we're bringing in 67 new staff into elementary, there's no change in gifted. In fact, across the whole district, there's no change in gifted. And I also see a decrease of $843,000 in gifted salaries. Are we de-emphasizing gifted, or is, what's going on?
No, I can assure you we're not de-emphasizing gifted. We have a program that runs at the elementary level, which is called an itinerant program. And within that program, according to the state standards and regulations, you can have anywhere from 15 to 75 students. We did an analysis of the number of students that are coming into the program next year, even with the addition of the 6th graders. And our numbers run from a low of 44 to a high in the beginning 70s. Now that one number is troubling to us, but most of them are centered around 44 to 55 students. So we have enough coverage right now for the students in that program. The program will be the elementary program as it stands now, because that's what we do from K to 5, and because K to 6 will be elementary next year, it will be an itinerant program.
Itinerant?
Also, it probably seems like it was yesterday since I said it, but earlier this evening I did indicate that if board members are trying to look on the line item, that they'll see a 0 where in the past it had been 300 or 400,000 or whatever. That money is currently attached to a person in a building, and once those assignments are complete for whoever will be teaching gifted, the portion of their salary that's related to gifted will be moved to those line items.
Okay.
So those line items will be similar.
So that the dollars could change significantly.
They will.
I guess the thing that disturbs me is the fact that we have so much more in the elementary now that the number of faculty is still the same.
But the numbers, sir, you understand, when I explain that to you, our numbers are well within state guidelines. As a matter of fact, they are far lower in some cases than the 75 maximum.
Okay, so that's your guarantee, we are not de-emphasizing gifted.
No, I would not de-emphasize gifted.
She has no choice either.
Judy, are we going to have a gifted teacher traveling between one of the
We have had gifted teachers traveling for a long time now, and we will continue to do so. Most of them have a split of just 2 schools, which I was very pleased that the numbers worked out that way.
Judy, we've always had itinerant teachers of the gifted traveling at the elementary.
Sometimes 3 and 4.
We used to have 4 buildings at a time. There was a period of time, and that really was ineffective. They lost a lot of travel time, and it's hard to start in school and pick up in the middle of the afternoon. So right now, it's scheduled as 2 for most of the teachers at the elementary level.
Thank you.
Other questions from the audience tonight?
Yeah, I got a question.
Could you step up to the...
My name's Larry Doherty, and on this supplies where it's jumping up to $307,000, does that include salaries for the players?
No. All that includes are the uniforms and the other kind of supplies that we need to run all of our co-curricular programs. That's all of our sports teams, all of our other organizations at both the middle school level and the high school level.
Okay, can we assume next year that that figure will be somewhere around 921,000?
Well, I certainly hope not, but there will be increases with our plan for reorganization, which calls for us to have 3, 7, 8, 9 schools. And right now, we have one 9th grade program in all of those activities. Next year, we would, in 95, 96, we would have 3. We will have 2 8th grade programs next year, and the following year, we would have 3. So there will be increases associated with those programs.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And we'll wrap it up if you can come up to the microphone. We've got about 1 minute, Adrian. But you and I can both talk next Thursday when.
Or you can talk real fast.
I guess my first question is, what happens if I go 2 minutes? Do we all turn into pumpkins here, or what?
No, we leave.
The gavel drops.
Pardon? No, in all sincerity, I'm curious as to why the roof's going to fall in at 10 o'clock. I mean, it really is more than just a slight notice. I don't think this thing's going to run till midnight, but I'd like to know why the cutoff.
Because we have 4 sessions, Adrian, we decided to have them from 7:30 to 10, so that we didn't go till midnight, and you just used a half a minute of your time.
Oh, in other words, there's no security or anything that's hooked up to the space agency or anything?
No.
I think it's a little ridiculous, and I don't know what you'd do if you had 200 people out here. What I'd like to know is if any of these figures that are on the agenda tonight are going to be handled through the bond issues. They should not be, but, for example, library books. Normally when a new school opens, much of this stuff is funded under a bond issue. In this case, we only have 2 elementary schools this year. Is any of this material going to be funded under a bond issue?
I believe that the answer was that there are some property items under co-curricular, 90,000, and that was listed as going to the bond issue.
Property items, yes, I understand that. I'm asking about the libraries.
At the present time, no. If the board should decide to put that under a capital expenditure, they would agree.
Capital expenditures will be Tuesdays in detail. The entire capital expenditure budget will be discussed next Tuesday.
Oh, you'll have to excuse me, I wasn't aware that library books came under capital expenditures.
They just said you did. They just said they don't. If you wanted to compare for yourself, I'm sure you do, come Tuesday when you'll see it all.
Suppose you budget it as it is tonight, I'm speaking of the library books, and at a later date you decide to put it under a bond issue. Can you do that after June the 30th?
Don't know, we'll have to get an answer for you.
I'll tell you, quite frankly, this budget is $15,000 for both each of those 2 schools, and I saw the opening of Gwinnett Square called for, it came in under 2 different budgets at about $100,000.
We budgeted last year as well for some materials for both of those schools, so it's over.
There's zero in the budget, but I'm just saying, $15,000 would not stop this elementary school library.
Well, I'm concerned that it's budgeted under this particular budget that you're going to have to make a decision on and pass by June the 30th. And then at a later date, some of the money comes out of the bond issues. It's not funny, Charlie. It has happened. The other thing is, I'd like to ask Dr. Venema, can you give me, without violating security or whatever you violate, the hourly rate for the extra duty, or I guess you're calling it co-curricular now. Is there a general hourly rate?
I would hope I'm not violating anything by giving you the answer, but we have a contracted rate that we pay advisors and coaches for our different positions, and those amounts are based on their level of responsibility for those different organizations. It's not an hourly rate, it is an activity rate. It's a stipend for the responsibility of being the basketball coach, for example.
It depends upon the difficulty of what they're coaching, I assume.
The length of the season, amount of responsibility, all of those things factored in.
Could you give me a ballpark figure?
Of
If you take the number of hours that they dedicate over the season, it's probably about $1 an hour.
In other words, $1 an hour.
It's pure dedication on their part. So if you're familiar with sports teams and how much time and effort the coaches put in, they don't get paid very much for the number of hours they put in.
That applies to a lot of things in life.
Sure.
But I was wondering, in other words, Mr. Kelly, if they put in 44 hours, he makes out a check for $44?
No.
No,
it's not.
He gets paid for
It's
the
not
whole
based
season.
on hour at all. It's based on a system that we have in
All right.
place for compensating them, and they're paid for the whole event.
Right. I'll try to get back to you later on, unofficially, during the course of the day or late afternoon. The other thing is, there has been two or three times it was mentioned that I guess it would be the athletic director, which is Mr. Ryan, his salary is included here. Then I would assume his salary will not show up or does not show up on the list of employees that Mr. Schmidt normally handles.
That's not a correct assumption, it will.
It will. In other words, then
Double count.
the salary here, and it shows up there, is there a duplication then of this?
No. The budget contains the salary where it has always been. All Don is showing on these sheets is that in his calculations of the cost, part of that cost is the salary. That salary shows up on the same line item, maybe in the lower two.
Right. In other words, there's no extra pay here. It is just
His pay, yeah.
his pay that would show up. And I wanted to ask about the in-service courses. Do the teachers pay for taking those courses?
No, they pay a registration and materials fee, Adrian, which helps handle the process.
In other words, this is in no way a wash item then?
No, but I pointed out earlier that it is to the board's
Wonderful
decided
guy.
advantage to have them take these courses, because you can cover, for $1,500, you can cover 25 people. If they take course reimbursement by going to university, the cost is much higher to the board.
Oh, yes, I know that. I've been told that so often.
No, that's true.
And I wanted to know if the courses that the teachers do take, could they just take a course for no advanced degree?
Are you talking about the in-service courses?
Yes, I'm still on the in-service courses.
Well, they are not part of a degree program. The ones
So the
that we
answer
offer
is
are
yes,
not.
they can take it for
Yes.
no advanced degree.
Can they take courses in the in-service program that does go toward an ME degree?
No.
They get no credit toward an ME degree in this district.
Yeah, no, that's
They
not
get the
correct. They can,
equivalent.
Audrey. The courses that we offer here are courses that are approved by the intermediate unit for graduate level in-service credits, and they are acceptable by the state for the master's equivalency.
Right, and the teachers can take it through our in-service
But that's not the
courses
question
if
she
they
asked.
They
meet,
can.
if they
An
meet the
EDM is a
requirement.
master's degree.
She said ME.
I said
MED is a
ME.
master's degree, and MED is a master's of
Yes.
education.
That's what she
What,
asked.
excuse me.
Okay, then I'm sorry, I was ahead of all of you. I understood what she was saying.
The master's equivalency of the well, let's just clarify it.
I appreciate your time. I'm sorry I went over the limit, and thank God I have a kindred spirit in Fred Schmidt who knows what I'm talking about. Thank God for Little Apple.
You're on the
Okay, folks, next Tuesday, it's 7:30, and we're going to talk about the capital budget. The following Thursday, it will be board questions and the administration, the responses for today, that they're going to be coming back on Thursday and talking about is a number for tech prep development, activity fees or ideas on how to offset some of those costs. Where the money is for the savings that we've had for refinancing, where does that show up in the budget? How does it impact our carryover? And also, where is the step money for the teachers? Those are the questions that the administration can bring responses to.
The step money for teachers?
Thank you.
Well,
Adjourned.
the 1.5.
Oh, I was gonna say, what step?
Yeah, Donna's.
Yeah, what?